Hey there! This episode of the Flabbergasted podcast contains adult themes and language. Listener discretion is advised.
This is the Flabbergasted podcast, where we just can't believe you haven't seen it. Every episode, we discuss a movie that one of us has seen and the other hasn't. Follow us on Instagram @FlabberPod and subscribe in your podcast app of choice. I'm your host, Rogge. Let's get to it. Tonight we are talking about the 2009 Quentin Tarantino adventure drama war film, Inglorious Basterds, starring Brad Pitt, Diane Kruger, and Eli Roth, and Christoph Waltz. IMDb, I don't agree with that. It didn't have Christoph Waltz on there.
It didn't?
It didn't.
Who's Eli Roth?
I think Eli Roth is possibly the Bear Jew. Let me open link in new tab. Little control click here. It is the guy that played the Bear Jew.
Interesting. How about... Oh, never mind. I'm going to save it. Just interesting.
In Nazi-occupied France during World War II, a plan to assassinate Nazi leaders by a group of Jewish U.S. soldiers coincides with a theater owner's vengeful plans for the same. This is a movie that I have seen, I think, 3 times now, all in the last 10 years. I think my first Tarantino film was Django in about 2012. So it's been since then. Sometimes it's on for free on Tubi or Pluto or something. I think I've just seen it on the Roku popped up. And I think it's a lot of fun. There's obviously very serious subjects, and it's war and some different things like that. But there's also some more humorous moments, and it keeps me engaged and entertained. I don't think it drags, and I like it a lot. This is your first time seeing it, right?
My first time seeing it.
Wow.
I think my first Quentin Tarantino film is Kill Bill. No,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction.
Sure.
Yes. And then Kill Bill. And then, those are the ones that I knew enough to know that they were his movies.
Mm-hmm.
This is my first time seeing this.
Mm.
I do think it was pretty entertaining. I didn't realize it was a sort of a Quentin Tarantino thing to do the chapters and to have the movie broken up in that
Mm-hmm.
way.
Yeah.
It made sense for Pulp Fiction because it was from different points of view.
Right.
And then for Kill Bill, when it did it, I just thought that was kind of the thing they were doing.
Yeah. I think that I don't know a lot about the history of Kung Fu. I think a lot of Kill Bill has to do with paying homage to Japanese cinema, and that's a whole slaughterhouse genre.
Yeah.
And I think with intermissions and things, I think that's part of it maybe, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
And this was more about time frame, right? It was giving you eras, because we saw the La Padite house with young Shoshana early, and then I had to make sure that we knew that we were cutting forward. And then there were a couple different perspectives that we went to even after that.
I feel like the chapter title cards, for lack of a better term, were different than the time jumps too, though.
Sometimes it gave an actual title of here's what's going to happen in this section. Yeah.
And then the next scene
so.
was January 1944 or whatever.
So I have some questions for you about your first time seeing Inglorious Basterds. Did you recognize Christoph Waltz immediately?
Yes.
Okay.
I also recognize, by the way, I
Brad
recognize
Pitt.
him from Django Unchained, but I feel like the credits, again, I'm a credit person, and there was a very Western-y feel to the credits, I think, again.
Okay.
And I also noticed that they had yellow credits in one font, and then halfway through they switched to white. And to make a decision like that, it is a decision. So I'm curious what that was, but I have no clue.
Sure. I couldn't have told you anything about the credits for this movie. That's something I picked up on. So you recognize him from Django.
Yes.
and and what's your initial reaction to recognizing him? It's this guy, or is it like, ugh, okay, here we go?
Well, I didn't. You see in the beginning of the movie, and they're coming up on the bikes or whatever,
I think there's a car and maybe a bike.
I was like, I don't remember if there's a car, but they're coming up, and I was like, okay, this is interesting, right? I don't know what I'm getting ready to see. And then he gets out of the car, and I'm like, I feel like these are bad guys.
What gave it away?
Right. Well, I couldn't really see the uniforms right away, so I'm like, they look military. It said German occupied France. They gotta be
German
bad
occupied
guys.
France, 1941. Yeah, you know what you're expecting.
So I didn't love that, and then I saw him, and I'm like, oh, interesting, because I liked him as a good guy in Django Unchained.
He is a very good guy in Django Unchained.
And so that was kind of like a little bit of a bummer.
So you were bummed out. It didn't keep you. Was there any point in which you were rooting for him? There's times where you're almost supposed to be like at least impressed by this guy.
I really thought when he was talking to the guy, the father in
the dairy farmer,
yeah, I thought he was gonna say. I thought it was going to go like, I know you're hiding people, but I recognize that and it's okay. I'm going to help you in some way. I thought maybe it was going to go like that.
Okay, one of these things where he's an SS officer, but he's trying to do good from the inside, like a Schindler's List kind of situation.
Yes.
Okay.
And then he brought the people in and I'm like, okay, this is definitely not okay.
Yeah, and he's going like, thank you so much. He's like pointing down to the floor where to shoot, but is like talking like he's very like cold-hearted and methodical about, like he's very just like down to business. Like, this is what we're doing. Yeah, you're coming here and you're shooting them and like we're moving on. Yeah. Do you think that he kept his promise and like didn't punish the dairy farmer?
I don't.
Oh.
I think he killed him, but we don't really see that.
Yeah, why wouldn't he?
And I also, when I'm watching that whole scene, I'm very caught up in how anxious and terrifying this has to be for this dairy farmer.
Yeah. He kept his cool for so long.
So long. And you don't know, like, it's one of those situations where he comes up and he shakes the guy's hand and you're like, you shake his hand too hard and it's a challenge. You don't shake his hand hard enough and he thinks that you're hiding something or you're, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but it's like, no matter what, every tiny little thing that he's doing could be analyzed in one way or another because he doesn't know anything about this guy who's coming up to him, really.
Well,
outside of his reputation.
I think yes and no. I mean, I think he sees his uniform. He knows this guy by reputation and by name. I think this is probably not the first time he's had to. Well, he even says, like, my house was searched and I talked to someone a couple of years ago. Like, why is this happening again now? So I think that he is very deferential. I think that there's kind of a playbook. Like, okay, the Nazis come to your house. You have to bend the knee. You have to do what they say. Just give them what they want. Be polite. All that kind of stuff. And then they'll let you be, as long as you don't find anything. So I don't know. I could see it both ways. I mean, he's clearly terrified.
Yeah, there's a definite calculation on this guy's part, the dairy farmer's part, of how to balance the being reverent, if you will, and also not being a complete pushover that they just take advantage of and kill.
Well, yeah, or even, you don't want to do the thing where you look suspicious because you're participating, you're cooperating too much. Right. If he does a good job of being like, I don't know, the boy was maybe 9 or 10 and the daughter, wow, man, shoot, I don't, like it's pretty believable.
Right.
The way he's playing it out. How did you know immediately, okay, this guy's harboring Jews? Did you pick up on it?
Not immediately, and I don't remember what triggered me to it, but I'm like, they're definitely hiding something. I don't remember what specifically made me think it. But it was before
they showed them on camera.
But it was before they showed them. And I also did take a note that, do you think, and after seeing the rest of the movie, I don't think this is what happened, but I said, was the change to English for the audience?
I thought so. I mean, obviously he does say, okay, so they probably don't speak it and that's why they're not freaking out kind of thing. So they do try to play it off a little bit, but my immediate thought was that it probably was for the audience.
And how terrifying would you be under the floorboards? Because not only are you, like, you're hiding with this person, trusting them not to give you up, number one. So that's a huge amount of trust and, like, hope in another person. And so you're kind of, you could be outed in two different ways by the people that's trying to protect you and by just being found out from your own, if one of them had coughed or whatever, right? The classic, I'm hiding in the walls and I cough concept.
And now they're speaking in a different language and you have no context to even figure it out. Yeah. We learn a lot about Christoph Waltz, Colonel Landa. I just called him Christoph Waltz in my notes the whole time, but I think it's Colonel Landa. He is clearly a very intelligent man. He is very good at what he does, which, I mean, his nickname is the Jew Hunter. It's all about hunting down. And he says even, like, I'm proud of my nickname. I've earned it. And then way later on, we find out that is not true. He's not proud of it. Right. And so I wonder if something changed in the interim there for him. But I noticed, and Rachel really noticed as well, we both really noticed parallels between Christoph Waltz and Brad Pitt, because they're both just kind of talking about themselves. They both like to introduce themselves, say who they are. They both say that I came down off a mountain to help with this, right? Whether it's hunt down Jews or hunt down Nazis. They both really want to know, well, what have you heard about me? Tell me about my reputation. Do you think that's a pride thing?
Yeah. Or also, I mean, that's my first, like, gut instinct is, I think it's a pride thing, but I also think it's if you tell me what you know, I can figure out what I can get away with in this interaction.
Chess move thing.
Yeah.
By putting the person on the back foot, tell me what you know about me. How can I use that to my advantage?
Because you're also, depending on what they reveal,
right?
You're learning something no matter what.
Did you notice these parallels between the two of them? They're like both the captains of their teams. The good guys and the bad guys.
I didn't notice it in the way that you're talking about it, but I noticed towards the end when they're talking to each other.
Yeah.
He says,
what would you do in my position? Like that kind of stuff.
Well, but we don't have the mutual respect I expected.
We're not operating on the same level of mutual respect, something like that. Yeah.
And I noticed that, and that kind of made me think, that's where I really drew the parallels, that he at least thinks they're kindred in some type of way.
Yeah, I have a lot of notes on this earlier. We can just get to them, or later, I mean, if you want, because those scenes where it's the two of them, I mean, they're not really squaring off because there's such a power imbalance at that point. But I think what I wrote was that Waltz really misunderstood Aldo. He thought that he and Aldo were coming at their positions about the war and things like that from the same place of, like, very intellectual, very selfishly motivated. What can I get out of this? Aldo's like, no, I'm here to kill Nazis. Like, I'm a true believer. Aldo fundamentally believes that it's worth dying for. Those people are base evil, and it is an actual good. Whereas Waltz, I think, enjoys playing the game. He enjoys solving a puzzle to figure out where they're being hidden, what levers can he pull, pressure points on people. But at the end of the day,
it's a job for him.
It's a job, and it's what can he gain out of it is a power play. So and I think that was a way that he misunderstood. He just assumed that he's like, wow, this, the Apache, the Inglorious Basterds, everyone's heard of them. They played these mind games. They're so ruthless. Like, he's got to be like the American version of me, right? Which is, I think, a mistake people make in underestimating other points of view, right? It's like, he's a narcissist.
What motivates them is what motivates other people. And that's
something that I think especially a really intelligent person like Aldo might do, right? Because he's very intelligent, but he's very self-centered and narcissistic, I think.
Yes.
Not Aldo. Christoph Waltz. Yeah. I think you guys know what I meant. So I really like that. And then, the whole introduction of the Bastards is really good. Did you recognize any of those guys in the lineup?
Yes. The guy that ends up being there at the end is the guy from The Newsroom, which is an HBO show. that I rewatched recently. And
I have not seen it. The guy that ends up being there at the end.
yeah,
with Aldo?
the little guy.
Okay, that's BJ Novak from The Office.
Yes, and Jeremy said Rogge will probably know him from The Office.
Much more famously from The Office.
But I haven't watched The Office, so I've seen like an episode here or there, but not enough to know that.
So wild. It's like the best television show of all time.
So yeah, I recognized him. Who else?
He was a
did I
writer on
recognize?
The Office, as well as an actor.
I feel like I recognized a couple more of them, but not enough
To play, I couldn't place them
now
either.
that I'm sitting here thinking of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I recognized other people for sure.
You recognized Daniel Bruhl,
Yes.
who plays Zemo in Captain America Civil War.
For sure.
And then there's the movie critic.
Michael Fassbender.
Yeah, Michael Fassbender, who gives himself away as not being German.
And Michael Myers.
Yes. Which is pretty fun.
Jeremy told me that he was in it before he left the room, and then he came back in. He did not watch the whole thing with me, but he kept coming in and he's like, what is happening? So I have to pause it and say like, okay, they're trying to blow up the theater and they're trying to set the theater on fire. And
but they don't know each other. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to explain this. And he came back in when they're in the ballroom or whatever, talking about the Operation Rhino. No. Kino. And I'm like, that one is Michael. And he's like, well, that's Michael too. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're both in the same scene, which is just kind of one of those dorky, funny moments when you realize both of those actors have the same name.
Yeah.
It's just funny.
I have a question for you. Why does Christoph Waltz, he compares Jews to rats, and he's like, now, and I don't consider this an insult, but like, obviously, if you're comparing a group of people to vermin, like that's clearly insult on a base level. Does he hate Jewish people? And if so, why?
I don't think that he does.
It's just a game that he has to play?
I think he just is like, this is my job and this is what I'm doing.
In order to get the thrill I want out of chasing someone down, doing this detective investigator work, this is the lane for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that he actually has this belief system in him that Jewish people are necessary to exterminate.
Yeah. But then
that's what I picked up from the movie.
Yeah. For the whole movie, I would agree with you. He seems like he's just in it for the thrill of the chase and for the clout and things like that. And then at the end, he gets on his hands and knees and strangles the actress. Mm-hmm. And there's real rage and passion. Yeah, I mean, the act of strangling is very intimate, right? Mm-hmm. It's very like, you know how they say stabbing is a metaphor for, you know, like the methods of killing people all have their different things. But I think you're watching the life leave someone's eyes as you're strangling them. He had a gun on him. There's a million different ways he could have killed her. If he was so in on, okay, great, they're going to blow it up, I'm going to let them do that. I'm going to let them do that. This is all groovy. Why violently murder her?
I don't have an answer to that outside of just some thoughts that bubble up as you say this.
Yeah.
And one is nobody else knew that she was potentially involved.
Okay.
Like, I don't even think the people that he was with when he was investigating the tavern scene knew.
I think he put all the pieces together first. Yeah.
And so then he's like, this is his opportunity to take her out without drawing attention to it. But why? So, and here's where I'm like, because she's not Jewish either. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just his outlet of like, I can kill this person and get away with it.
So he's a psychopath.
I think maybe.
Or a sociopath, at least.
With my non-psychology degree and only seeing this movie, yes. Yeah. Like, he's just like that. His
position would certainly, even if it was found out, no one would blink an eye that's above him on the German side.
Right.
But I mean, if his end game is the house in Nantucket and the Congressional Medal of Honor, it seems like it is a little bit of a black stain on his resume for those people once they find out, hey, also, why did you kill Bridget von Hammerstein?
Will they find out that if
because it's going to burn down?
Blown up? Yeah.
Yeah. Probably not.
We're jumping so far ahead, and I want to talk about the rat thing really quick.
Right, you
mentioned it.
Well, it's because we're asking questions about his nature at the beginning, and those are answered here at the end.
I liked this. Ooh, like is maybe not a good word. They say interesting, but this whole rat squirrel thing is very interesting.
Right.
And so I'm actually thinking about this when he's talking about it. And I'm like,
what's the difference between a rat and a squirrel?
Yeah. And
Really?
I'm like, really, a squirrel's probably not going to come into my house.
Right.
A rat actually might.
Yeah.
So there's that. But I think it's really interesting how sometimes we instinctually, if you want to say instinctually, or just like we dislike something, but we don't actually know why we dislike it.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be some kind of, it's like just in the culture, the way you're, even from a little kid, you're told that rats are gross. And so you don't maybe even remember being told it. But by the time you're old enough to think it, you're like, yeah, rats are
It's just
gross.
right
Like
there
it's
in the
just
back of your
part of
head.
so much of popular culture.
So what about with people, though? Not a specific race or categorization of people, but have you ever
why do
met
people
that
have
person?
a vibe that,
Yeah.
on an individual level, I don't know what that is. I think there's, I'm not any kind of scientist. I wonder if there's like certain like smells you don't even notice, but just like pheromones that set you off about someone. I don't know how that would correlate to their personality. I mean, maybe to their level of hygiene or something. It's got to be. I mean, do you have that as a kid? You do. You have it as a kid in terms of this person looks scary. So you've got like just like the physical receptors that set things off. And then as you get older, I think you're more observant and you have like more data that your brain is processing it based off of, that it's not conscious.
Yeah.
But it's crazy that our brains work that way.
I've heard that there is some type of, I don't know if science is the right word for it, but there's some type of something, which, I mean, we could totally cut this out because it's not factually based at all, but
Welcome
about
to Flabbergasted.
Yeah. About tapping into that and trusting it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like this gut feeling that you get around somebody and like liking them or not liking them and like letting it guide you a little bit more. But I don't know if that's really
It sounds like
thing.
it could be pseudoscience or phrenology based or something.
And I would be curious to know more about it because you definitely get vibes off people. And maybe that's not even a good word to say, but you can be around somebody and they creep you out, or you can be around somebody and they instantly make you feel good and you make decisions based on that. And I know that I notice those things about people that I meet. And because I know that I do that, I try, which this could totally defeat the purpose of knowing that, but I try to like take that into account when I'm like evaluating this person in my head, if this is somebody I want to be friends with or have a relationship.
Try to go the other way, or like see something good. Like, okay, I didn't love that person. Let me see if I can find something that was good or was interesting.
Or I at least recognize it so I can know if I'm being, if I name it and I know that I'm making a judgment about this person without actually knowing them, I can say, okay.
Yeah.
You can keep that in the back of your head. It counts for something, but maybe you should figure out why you don't like them at first glance.
Yeah, I'm just trying to combat your own internal biases.
But I do think the whole concept is interesting, and I would like to know why we as a people do that. Because we definitely do.
And I think it goes without saying that this whole conversation has nothing to do with like, he's using it to talk about an entire race of people.
Yes.
And we here at Flabbergasted condemn legitimate anti-Semitism in all forms. And it's, there's no anything that we say that's positive about Colonel Landa is, being impressed by his intellect or something, but it's nothing, Nazis, unequivocally bad,
good,
should be punched in 2024. Punching Nazis, A-okay by me. You heard it here. Hopefully not first.
For sure.
What's the deal with Brad Pitt's neck scar? You noticed it.
I don't know if
you didn't notice it. He's got a scar that goes all the way around like the base of his neck, a thick. Rachel thought it looked like a rope burn.
That's
scar.
what I would guess based on what you're saying, because I don't think I actually noticed.
Wow. Okay. Aldo the Apache. Yeah, you can kind of see it in this first picture. There, the skin on his neck.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I would have actually. You guys are watching this on a big projector screen. My TV is a little smaller.
We watched it back here.
Oh, okay.
I think the whole thing. You can see it better on this one.
No, I don't think I would have noticed.
Yeah, I wonder what the backstory is. It's too thick to be a knife.
It's got to be rope burn of some kind.
We talked a little bit before recording about his nickname is Aldo the Apache, right? And he says something about having Native American bloodline in the beginning when he's introducing himself and to the bastards and all of that. How do we feel about Aldo, and why is he the Apache?
Well, I think that's because he's saying that he wants scalps.
So you think I wonder if maybe Tarantino had this idea, like, let's have them not only be like super anti-Nazi, but like they're actively scalping them. Okay, how can I justify that? Okay, maybe if it has something to do with him going back to have a Native American heritage.
Maybe.
Could be. Is the speech, he's good at giving speeches.
Is that a Brad Pitt thing, or is that an Aldo the Apache thing?
I don't know. I mean, he's not giving a bunch of speeches in Oceans or the Brad Pitt movies.
I don't know, but when he talks, I'm listening to him.
Sure. Yeah, I guess that's
he's
true.
He's captivated me.
Yeah. And he's already, the guys that he has, I'm sure have already been handpicked. They know that they're, fervently anti-Nazi Jewish Americans and stuff. So it makes sense that he gets 100% investment from these guys.
Oh, yeah.
Several of them are happy to die for him and do so pretty happily.
What I think is interesting is you get backstory on well, first of all, they're American Jews.
Mm-hmm. Most of them.
You get that for sure. Like, they have a visceral connection to what they're fighting for. Some of them have even experienced part of
because he came from Austria.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you get that right away, but I don't know how Aldo is connected to this.
Yeah. And so something we talked about earlier was I wonder if him having Native American heritage makes him connect a little bit extra to, the plight of what's going on in the Holocaust. And he understands what it's like to be from a marginalized people group. And so he, of the officers, was just, more gung-ho for it. I think we see that he is a really effective military commander and strategist and stuff. So it could just be that he really loved killing Nazis. And I mean, it doesn't take a lot. That's, there was widespread anti-Nazi, but that was what America was in the 40s, right? So everyone pretty much felt that way, but he was good at it and he's smart. And so it might just be like, all right, this guy's passionate about it. And that's how he got to where he got, rose through the ranks.
Yeah. It seems like a small team, but I have no military background to know what can.
It seems small
what is
for the numbers that they're able to kill at different times. Yeah. No, I agree. There's 8 or 9 of them. Did you trust all of those guys the whole way? From the drop of the hat, you're like, these are the bastards. They're ride or die. We're good to go now. Okay. You never thought any of them were going to flip?
No.
And we haven't talked at all about Shoshana, who escapes from Christoph Waltz in the beginning. He kind of has a shot and doesn't take it.
He could have shot her, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, all the time
in Django Unchained,
waited,
we see him take shots at people that far away.
Well, and as soon as she goes out and he opens the door, there's a beat or two where he doesn't raise his gun. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, what is that?
I don't know. To this day, I don't know what the deal is with that.
He just delayed the shot so much, and then maybe she was just far enough away that he's like, bah, the elements will get her.
Yeah. So she escapes, and then the next time we see her, she is running a full-on artsy cinema in 1944 Paris.
Yes. So 2 things really quick. Probably not really quick. How strong of a person do you have to be? I don't know. Your fight or flight is going to kick in, or your freeze, right? Because it's fight, flight, or freeze. Mm-hmm. And literally, she had there were 2 boys, her and
2 parents and 1 brother, I think.
2 parents and 1 brother. So 3 people were just brutally murdered.
Yeah.
Shot through the floorboard, and she escapes and runs. And I'm like, that's a pretty strong reaction, and go her. I don't know how I would do in something like that. I think that's interesting because I was going to say we don't live in a time where I have to know that, but I continually fear every day that we're moving to craziness.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to point that out because she just took off running and she ran, and good for her for not like just accepting potential fate of dying.
And then we're just kind of left to imagine how she got from point A to point C, which is the owner of a cinema in France. You know, her story is about an aunt and uncle, which I'm, sure is not true, but she must have done. She is just very intelligent and capable, and learns English, and there's a lot that goes in there.
She did really well, and I think they don't. I did not watch that movie and seeing her escape. I did not expect her to come back. Actually,
really,
yeah.
That's so interesting. You thought it was just like, okay, here's an example of what Christoph Waltz, how he operates.
And honestly, even after all the time we spent there, because it was a good chunk of time spent there at the house, I didn't think she'd pop up again.
Yeah.
But before we get to the cinema, we get the Inglorious Basterds killing Nazis under the bridge. Or by the bridge or whatever.
Whatever that is.
And so many things stuck out about this. I really wanted to point out the whole topic about the uniforms.
Okay.
And how uniforms, he has this whole thing about how we're going to know who the Nazis are because of the uniform they're wearing.
Yes.
And there's this whole thing about that. And I think it's important to point out, just by the nature of the name, symbols have power. And I think that's just something that I noticed in this movie multiple times. This symbols have power, and people are expected to give respect to these symbols because they are. It's an expectation.
Yeah.
So that's a thing. The other thing I thought was very interesting is when he says, when you get back home, what are you going to do with your uniform? And the guy's like, I'm going to burn it.
I thought that's what you were going to say.
Yeah. And I know that it's very harsh, maybe is not the right word, very permanent to literally cut this scar on his head. But at the same time, there's this whole thing happened where Nazis were, at the end of the war, were given new identities to be relocated to other places. And they
Operation Paperclip, probably not the first time it's been brought up on the pod.
Not the first time it's been talked about, but by the way, never learned about that in school. Just throwing it out there. But there's a reason that this stuff keeps coming back up, because, I mean, this kind of goes into this whole other thing where it's like, what kind of bad behavior do we allow because you're good at other things?
Oh, yeah.
Like, why are we doing that? And I understand that not everybody can be perfect, but what was their punishment, honestly?
Well,
or maybe punishment.
There was the Nuremberg trials. Like, there were Nazi generals and officers that were hanged.
For sure.
Yeah.
But then there were other people that it was like,
escaped to Argentina. And that were brought over. Yes.
Don't say anything.
Yeah.
Wink, wink.
But the counterpoint is Robert Oppenheimer. There are Nazi scientists who made NASA possible and made us getting to the moon possible, right? And so you don't want to totally throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it takes a real discernment to get in there and be like, okay, is this repentance genuine?
Yeah.
Like, what are we working with here?
And how do you even know if you're talking to a master manipulator or not? Like, you don't know. I think that it's worth noting.
Yeah.
And worth us as individual people, like, thinking about what we're willing to accept from people who are behaving in completely appalling ways.
Yeah. And when you are, even when you're not calling something out, what are you tacitly accepting?
Right.
What are you allowing to continue?
Yes.
And so, this all really comes directly back to what we talked about earlier. It's the pragmatist, Landa. Oh, I'm going to get a house in Nantucket and a Medal of Honor and all this kind of stuff, versus the true believer, Aldo, who's like, that all sounds great. And he even is like, it's a good deal. I'd take that deal. Like, I get it. I get where you're coming from. You're ending the war, and I'm in favor of that.
Right.
But you're still a Nazi, and I'm not okay with you not having a swastika on your forehead.
Right. I'm not okay with you not being identified as such.
Mm-hmm. You did full-on Nazi things.
Right.
Happily.
Right.
You were the Jew hunter.
So that takes us, we have that whole experience, and then we get to the theater. Which the other thing, we get our first introduction to Hitler between those two chapters, I think.
I'm not sure where it falls in. It could be.
It's
Oh,
the guy
it is.
that he's talking to
He's
is
talking
recounting
to Private Butts about how he was the one left alive
Yes.
and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm.
And the thing about that I always think is I understand from what I've heard historically that maybe Hitler was a little crazy.
Yeah, mentally unstable.
Mentally unstable, yeah. But I always worry about how we portray that.
Mm-hmm.
It seems almost satirical in the way that we portray him.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's accurate or not really.
Yeah.
But then
this is a Tarantino film. He's not going for like a dead-on portrayal of exactly what Hitler was actually like. He's like, look at this idiot, his blustering red face, angry, yelling for no reason. Like,
even in some
he suck so bad?
Even in some of like the more serious World War II movies I've seen, they allude to him being crazy or paranoid or off his rocker about certain things. And my whole point in that is we look at it now and we're like, oh, he was crazy. Like,
yeah.
But we don't actually talk about this crazy man was
very politically successful
and politically successful enough to make this whole thing happen.
Right.
And I think that is very scary.
Right. If you play up the outrageous elements, it becomes more fairy tale than historical fact in people's minds.
I think we need to recognize and remember that this was historical, and there are fantastical elements of this movie that we're watching, and it's entertaining for sure, but certain elements of this did really happen.
Yeah.
Hitler was really a person.
Yeah.
There was really
a Holocaust. It's so insane to me that there are Holocaust deniers. Like it blows my mind.
Yeah. I think that
because you're not taking the history part seriously. Yeah.
If we don't take the history part
take it about
seriously, right? It's the whole you're doomed to repeat it kind of thing. And I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in a world where we do that. I can't really help that because I'm only one person, but are there things that I as one person can do to help prevent it? Okay, that's my soapbox about that.
So we meet Daniel Bruhl, whose name is something.
Zemo.
We meet Zemo, and he is, chatting up Shoshana.
Frederick Zoller.
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 Yeah. So Shoshana, she's constantly, apparently owning a cinema in mid-1940s Paris means you are spending most of your time changing the letters on the front of it. Which I never considered was like your main job. I mean, it's a lot, you're going to have to move it every couple of letters. So you're going up and down that ladder a bunch. I'm scared. I'm happy to go up a ladder. I'll climb up pretty tall ladder up a couple of stories. That's no problem with me. Climbing back down. Well, love climbing down. I don't love the heights really. And then just looking down, it's kind of sticking your foot out into the unknown. Like I know there's a step down there, but like I don't want to miss it. So it's real. Even climbing down isn't so bad. It's getting on the ladder to climb back down. If I got off the ladder, if I never leave the ladder, it's fine. Because I was up here on the roof the other day trying to do some stuff with a gutter, failed. There's a bunch of sticks up there. I threw a bunch of them down. And then, it's just 10 foot, right? Just onto our roof. And it took me like a couple of minutes to be like, okay, I'm just going to get down there. I'm just going to stick my foot out to get back on the ladder. Because just the way you have to like turn and
awkward.
Then step down into it. Yeah. I don't love it.
I used to feel a lot more confident in doing the ladder thing than I am now.
So she's up on the ladder and Zemo.
With no spotter.
Right. You don't want Marcel spending more time on the sidewalk than he has to.
I don't really, but
you're scared for Marcel the whole time.
Yeah.
Zemo's coming up. He's trying. He thinks that he is so suave,
so charming.
Right. So at this point, this whole storyline of the movie becomes not really it's not totally about the bastards. It's not totally about the Holocaust or the hunting of Jews or something. For me and Rachel, it was a lot of men who think that they are being charming, but really are being predatory
Creepy,
or
yes.
creepy or don't realize or pretend to not realize that there's a power imbalance, can't take no for an answer, like all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm 100% with you.
Yeah.
And
this guy just happens to be very well connected within the Third Reich German army.
And I was just worried for her in
Right.
every
100%.
interaction.
As you should have been, and as she was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and I was like, oh, don't say that. Oh, you're being too harsh.
Right.
Like, as women, those are real thoughts that go through your head. Like, where is the line between being...
How do I let him down nicely, but he thinks like I'm not too much of a jerk, but I don't want to lead him on.
Because the switch flips like that.
Because if he gets mad, he could kill me.
As we see.
Which is, and I think this is the great thing about movies, right? Which is probably what Tarantino would say as well, is that this is among the most extreme examples of that you could give, right? It's like, it's a joke how extreme of an example that is. This is a Jewish woman who is pretending to not be Jewish, who owns a theater in Resistance, France, not even Resistance, in Vichy, France or whatever. And there's a Nazi soldier there.
Yeah.
And so she's not only dealing with the male-female, but she's dealing with the Nazi Jew, which is, I think, maybe like an allegory of some kind. It's kind of subtext to just emphasize how much the power, imbalance dynamic that there is there.
Yes.
When she's like, oh, so do you want to see my papers? I was like, okay, you have to get it. How does he not get it at, do you want to see my papers? That was very okay, like you're just here to interrogate me. It was her making it very clear that she was not interested in this being relationship-y. And he wouldn't do it. Because there's times when you're meant to as far as Nazi soldiers go, this guy, he seems pretty he likes film, and he is like,
I'm more than the uniform, he says.
He's like, I'm pestering you. That's what I do best. Like, I'm acknowledging, I'm sort of self-deprecating, acknowledging that you think I'm annoying. He's cultured, some of that kind of stuff. But then he's just completely buddy-buddy with Joseph Goebbels, one of the 10 most evil people of the last 100 years. And then there's the scene at the end where he's like, okay, screw you. You can't say no to me, which is just we're saying the quiet part out loud, right? That's what it's going through some men's brains.
The whole time,
during that time, one of the examples of this that I really liked is when she gets to that lunch with him, and he's like, oh, I wasn't sure if you would accept my invitation. And she's like, bro, your invitation? You sent the Gestapo who told me to get my ass in this car.
Right.
They said that word for word.
Yes.
But he is such an idiot that he's not considering, he thinks it was, maybe he told someone, oh, go see if she wants to come. And they're like, oh, we know what that means. And maybe he's naive enough to not realize how that was going to go.
Maybe.
But man, he's just such a dunce about it.
And is he, I think that's the question we're asking. Not. Is he, or is he he's totally playing this off because he's in front of her face, he wants to be that, did you accept my invitation? Cheesiness, but he's also reinforcing that he has the power in this relationship.
Yeah.
I can't quite tell which it is.
We don't see him in any scenes without her, other than when he's watching
the movie. Yeah.
So besides that, we don't know enough about what's going on in his inner life. We just see it from her perspective, basically.
So we're at that lunch. I have things I want to chat about.
Absolutely.
Okay. So do you have questions first, or do you want to just go with it?
I am going to have questions about them at that lunch, but it's more once Christoph Waltz gets there.
Okay. I love the way they did the translating. So, also her hat, though, the translator's hat. Did you notice this?
No.
It's like a cheetah.
Okay.
Like a cheetah head as a hat. It's very weird, very, very noticeable. Okay, hated that. Also, there was a dog sitting there.
There was a poodle, yeah.
Which was kind of fun. I love dogs, so.
We're in France. There is a poodle here.
We'll accept that as a fun thing. But I love the translating. So it's very interesting, this dynamic that the minister, I forgot how to say his name, Goebbels, is has all of the power and is sort of joking around that his, not protege, but his actor is kind of growing in power or whatever. You can tell there's like this weird power dynamic happening there.
Yes.
And he's like, well, I need to ask her questions. We're not doing this. And I honestly didn't even know what they were talking about until they flat out said, we might move the premiere, which they said in their words, not in those words.
And it sticks out to you that they're at no point are they, would you be interested in doing this? Yeah.
Which also just made me very fearful for her.
Right.
Because now she's being, not only was she interacting with this one particular Nazi, but now she's being thrust into this situation with a ton, and by a ton, I mean like 300 of Nazis and not higher end. That was a weird way to say it.
Classy Nazis.
Well, I was going to say like in most influential.
Yes.
That's the word.
Powerful.
The most powerful. Yeah. So, but I love this scene because the director is asking the question and then it pans to the French translator and then pans to the
it's going
cinema
boop,
owner.
Boop, 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 boop.
Like,
it's bouncing.
Every question is a new shot on the person that's asking it. And I really thought that was fun.
Yeah. And you caught the like differences when he would say, ask her this, and then she would ask the same question, but the wording is always slightly different when you're going from German to French and French to German.
Yeah.
Which is so hard for me as a language teacher to explain to my students. Like we had a question on a study guide just the other day that was like, con quién quieres vivir, right? Who do you want to live with is what I'm asking. But in order, those words mean with who you want to live.
Right.
And so 10, probably 15 kids come up to me and they're like, what is this question asking? I go, oh, which one of those words do you not know? And we would puzzle through every word. And I'm like, so you know all these words? I go, yeah. I'm like, so what's asking? Who do you want to live with? Like, so what's the problem here? Like, well, it was just like with who, like, why are those in that order? I'm like, guys, like it's about
context too. Yeah. So there's this movie called The Interpreter. Have we talked about this before?
I don't think so.
It's an older movie and Nicole Kidman is an interpreter at the UN.
Okay.
And there's a murder that happens at the UN.
Fun.
And somebody comes in and they're investigating it and they're doing all the stuff. And there's this scene where somebody asks her a question and she says, if I interpreted dead and gone as the same thing, I'd be out of a job because they don't actually mean the same thing. But if you're not paying attention to the nuances in language, you could completely change the whole meaning of something.
Yeah.
Which I feel like that is connected to this. Like you have to interpret something, you have to understand the context in which it's, so you get the words right, so you can ask the question correctly.
Yeah. It's one of those things.
And you have to like process it before you say it.
Yes. Yeah. So like I've done interpreting on small scales. Like I've interpreted like interrogations essentially, like with police on one side and
potential
either
suspects.
Victims or like parents of victims, usually that kind of thing, like in a DCS context. And it's so hard. Like I speak Spanish pretty well, but I don't think of myself as an interpreter at all because of that kind of thing. It's like I know how to say what I want to say, but I don't necessarily know how most Mexican or Puerto Rican or take your pick would say a phrase like that. They might use a totally different phrase, like some kind of idiom that I'm not familiar with because I haven't spent the time there. So there's a lot of cultural knowledge that I don't have. I am very familiar with low-level Spanish grammar, right? I mean, your present tense, indicative, your preterite, your imperfect, and all that's pretty, the first 3 years that you would kind of study in high school, which means that I can, I know a lot of vocab. I can like say a lot of sentences in Spanish.
You could get by in a situation, but if...
Yeah, and even more, more than that, right? Like I can have, and I've had lots of conversations with people about, subjects such as child abuse, but there's no mistaking me for like, just like all the time, the years that you have to spend in a culture to know things like idioms quickly, like, yeah, that's what that means, but no one would ever say it that way. And kids are always asking, well, how do you say this? I'm like, I would just say this instead. Why? I don't know how to explain to you that just no one would ever say what you're asking me to say. Like in a word for word translation, you would just always say, what's the word for both? Well, it's ambos. And then if there's a Hispanic kid, they'll look up at me and be like, ambos. I'm like, you know what that means, right? They go, yeah, it means both. I'm like, would you ever say that? No, I probably would never say. I'd always say los dos, the two of them, right? Why is that how it is? I don't know.
Right.
And at first, when you tell kids you don't know as a teacher, they're like, you're not supposed to say, like, you don't say you're not supposed to say that to me, but they're
they
like,
give you the look.
What do you mean you don't know? Like, I thought you were a dictionary. I thought you were Mr. Spanish. I'm like, I mean, I sit there and get on Word Reference and look up words and be like, oh yeah, I have heard this before. Or, oh, that's completely, I have never said aardvark in Spanish before. And so in any interpretation is always very impressive to me because you have to have you have to be so fluent, which comes only from time and experience.
And if you're not just like translating something, I think that's the difference, right? You're not translating something. You're actually interpreting something, and the meaning is different.
Right. And a lot of people would say, well, those are the same thing.
They are
not.
Yeah. So Rogge and I both have a healthy appreciation for being able to one, speak a different language than native. And
it's so frustrating to me when I've got kids who are like, well, I'm here for the credit. Like, who cares about learning Spanish? Like, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, yeah, the idea that in a few years you'll be able to fully speak another language, like that's like magic. Like that's as close as you can get to. Like that's a whole life skill that's allowing you to really communicate with people on a completely different level than what you could right now. I don't care if you think that you can just Google translate a sentence and show them your phone, because that's not how it works. So it's the kids these days. They don't quite. Some of them, there's always going to be some really good kids who really get it, but a lot of them some of them are good kids, don't. They're like, it's a class, I'm just playing the game, I'm just here to get my grades and get in and out. And I'm like, man,
they're kind of missing the richness of what the experience could be, I think maybe is a good way to say it.
Yeah.
And not because they're dismissing it, but because they really don't comprehend it, I think.
A lot of them I'm finding out have been trained to look at school as a game. It's a test that you pass. It is something that you get through.
You just got to get done.
I have no desire to learn anything. And I don't know if 15-year-old me would have been like, I love learning things, but I might have. I mean, history, like I really liked social studies and history classes. So I wish that we saw a little more of it. And I think I don't like blaming elementary school teachers, but I have kids that have told me, oh yeah, we were just told to get done with your stuff as fast as you can so you can go outside and play so you can go and do the next game. Like, oh, I would rather you do a good job than do it as fast as you can. That sucks. I wish you weren't being told to do it that way. Anyway.
I think that translates into a lot of different things that people go through in life too. Like
just checking the boxes.
Yep, just checking the boxes. I loved that scene, how they did the translating.
And then you've got Waltz and Shoshana one-on-one.
And she recognizes him immediately, which I do think is interesting because she was looking up at him from the floorboard. And I feel like she recognizes him before he speaks as well. But his reputation preceded him, right?
Could be.
So she had to have known when he did the introduction.
Of him, could have seen,
So there was that. That was interesting.
So this is the million-dollar question of the movie is, did he recognize her immediately, in your opinion?
I don't think he did.
You don't think he did?
Well, I wondered when he ordered the milk.
He ordered her milk. He didn't order milk for himself. He ordered her milk.
But I don't think he saw her face.
Oh, wait for your milk. I don't know. Right, I can't say. Maybe he saw a picture. Maybe he saw a sketch before he went in. He had all the cards when he went into that house. Yeah. He knew that they were under the floorboards from the beginning. And this is something we'll talk about later with his personality. But it wouldn't shock me if he had seen a black and white photo of her face. Shoshana.
It was 3 years? 4 years?
Yeah, but this is a sociopath.
Okay.
This is, I mean maybe.
You could go either way, honestly.
Right.
Did he just order the milk? Because what did he order? Strudel?
Strudel, yeah.
I feel like that's something you would want with milk.
He didn't drink milk himself, though. He ordered her milk.
What did he drink?
I don't think he had a drink with it.
So that was weird. And he did say, wait for the cream.
They had the cream.
Wait for the creme. But I don't know that he saw her face. She was under the floorboards and then she ran so fast. I don't know that he actually saw her. If he did see her, would he remember her after all of the other people that he supposedly killed along the way?
Probably killed, yeah.
I mean, it could go either way. I had no idea. But when he ordered the milk, I wondered.
When he ordered the milk, I'm like, oh, okay, so he knows. Like, he knows.
I feel like he let it go. I don't think he would have let it go.
This was my question for you, right? Is why? I'm presupposing that he knew. And so why does he let her go? Because it's so tense here. Where's my question? Is he already playing the long con? Is he already planning his escape route? He doesn't know about Operation Kino yet at this point, though. So maybe he doesn't know. And it's coincidence that he ordered milk?
I think so.
'Cause she's like smiling, and as soon as he leaves, like she almost starts crying. Like her face like crashes, and she's like,
which was beautifully
real.
done.
Yes. Yeah, she's killing it in these scenes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just don't think she knew. Was she one of the girls
right
at the beginning?
I'm not
one of the
sure.
daughters?
Yeah, Rachel wondered if it was a hidden in plain sight thing where he was trying to pass off Shoshana as.
I'm going to Google that real quick. She was not. I thought it might have been the one on the far right, but she was not one of the daughters in the beginning.
Not as blonde. There's a few more scenes that I want to make sure we hit. Obviously, there's going to be some stuff at the very end. One of the iconic scenes of this film is the basement, that bar in the basement. We've got movie critic. We have the two German bastards, the Austrian Jew who went to America, and then the crazy dude that killed a bunch of officers.
Yeah.
When they went and broke him out and he was like, we're a real fan of your work, killing Nazis, but you're still an amateur. Like, that's really good. And he's just like clearly bonkers. Like he just is, but it's only for the officers. So he really does hate Nazis. It's not just like an excuse to be a serial killer. But he had the pillow that he stabbed through the pillow, and he had the stranglings and all kinds of stuff. So he's great.
I'm sorry. I'm going to jump back really quick.
Of course.
We didn't talk about the weird introduction to the French interpreter and the flash scene of them having sex. I don't know why that was there.
Well, I think it's just to show that Goebbels thinks... I think like he looks so ridiculous in that scene, and she just looks bored. Yeah. And so I think it's like to emphasize like what he thinks this relationship is versus what she's like. He's gonna kill me if I say no, and he's like, I'm the most charismatic, creepy little German Nazi man in the world, and everyone is putty in my hands. So I think it's
outside
just
of it making him look bad in like 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. Like maybe it was just to emphasize how much we don't like him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it could well be.
Sorry, and then because the killing of the other Nazis by the one guy is also like weird flash scenes too.
Yes.
Like very quick.
Yeah, some
2 second
quick cuts, which are either sometimes like almost played as jokes, like it's like funny how abruptly this happened or something like that, or it's just real quick exposition. Yeah. It's very show don't tell. It's almost on the borderline of show don't tell. Like, we're just telling you what happened here, but we're going to show it to make it more fun for you, kind of thing. So they're in the basement. Is there anything that sticks out to you from that? My question is, so before they go in, the movie critic goes, hey, can I count on you to keep it together? Because the dude is sharpening his knife, and he's like, we're not planning on getting in a fight down here. And the guy's like, well, we got to have a knife. He was like, do I not look calm? And he was like,
I guess you do.
Once you put it that way, I guess that's pretty fair. But he asks him if he can keep it together. And that dude, once the other officer comes and sits at the table, he's so visibly hates him so much. He's barely not killing him every second that he's not killing him.
Which the thing that sticks out to me about that particular, like the British guy coming in, is how quickly they have to build enough rapport to trust each other with their lives. Yeah. Like there's a reason, and again, no military background, so call me out if I'm wrong, it's okay. Just do it in a loving manner, please.
Do it in a loving manner on our hotline.
Yes. Yeah. There's a reason you go to boot camp with these fellow soldiers, and you're put through situations where you build that rapport with them. But in this case, it's like, hey, you gotta get along instantly and pretty quickly, at least enough to trust each other with your lives.
Yeah, I think the only explanation I could have for that is that they have a pretty good bonding agent in front of them, which is the universal hatred of Nazis and what they do and what they stand for. So they're like, "Oh, you hate Nazis too? Hey,
We're
boy,
on the same team."
Yeah,
And that's not just this movie thing. That's a like any kind of military operation type movie. Or
you like to see the bonding, so it's believable.
Well, yeah, but realistically, I imagine that can't always happen all the time.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think they're perfectly in sync the whole time they're down there, right? He's just ordering drinks for them. Like, hopefully they like that's something that they can at least, put down.
And they at least have it together enough to pretend like it's okay, even if they don't like scotch or whatever.
And to pretend to be playing the nickname headbands game. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which has apparently been around forever. So
good. Did you believe? I believe that it was a coincidence. I don't think that Bridget was setting anyone up. I think he had a baby, they got the night off, and they're just down there. I think that's it doing a good job of being like, you make plans and sometimes things happen. I think the movie is trying to say that.
I think if she was trying to set them up, they could have done it in a lot better way.
Yeah. And she's like, although I understand you weren't down there, so you didn't see, and you're just taking my word for it, but like, this is what happened. Yeah. Like, it was just a coincidence.
For sure. The one thing I noticed that stuck out to me, which I'm sorry, but it did multiple times, depending on which table we were at, for lack of a better term, server lady. I forgot her name.
Yeah, the barmaid.
In the white. Mm-hmm. She was either playing headbands with them or behind the bar with the guy.
Rachel pointed that out too, that they snapped back and forth.
It's a very obvious one.
I don't know if it could have just been an error, or it could be like some time lapsing, like we're just getting this from a couple different points.
It was from the shots. So when we were looking at the other table, she was playing, but when we dropped to the conversation at the officer's table, she was behind the bar. So I think it was an error.
Which was supposed to be pretty linear. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of room for how much time passed here or whatever. I don't know what that other officer's name was. I just called him creepy German officer, the guy that sits down and is like, he's been immune to my charms.
Yes, I loved that first of all, why did they not look around in the bar before they sat down?
Not very Inglorious Basterds of them.
It seemed like they lacked a lot in that scene. And then secondly, I love how he's like, well, I have that question too, Captain Frankfurt, Captain Munich.
Yeah.
Like, he totally pinpointed them, which I thought was fun. And how drunk must that guy be? I really liked that the one guy called him out. You must be a really drunken idiot, or just really, insubordinate or whatever.
Because it's a captain's table, all that stuff.
Well, and to call him out and being like, where are you from? Like, being very suspicious of him. Which I don't understand this. We either want to reward people for thinking on their own, or we want them to shut up and fall in line.
Yeah, it's a tough line to walk, because it's like, it's so context dependent, right? In that kind of thing. They're given the night off, so yes, you can drink, but you're getting too drunk and some of those sorts of things. I was worried that movie critic yelled at Wilhelm, drunk German dad, too quickly. Because he was like, he clearly wanted to get down there, meet up with Bridget, get back out. He's not thinking about the interplay and like the appearances and stuff. But he snaps at him pretty quickly, and then snaps at the other captain too. Did you think that he was nervous?
No, I don't think he was nervous. I think he was just trying to keep it moving, and the guy was drunk, and so he thought he could get away with it.
Gotcha. But I mean, you're drawing everyone's attention. I mean, it was a gambit.
Yeah.
And then, how quickly did you recognize when he messed up?
Right away.
Because of the other guy's eyes.
Yeah.
Or because you knew about the
I didn't know about it, but the camera angle was behind the hand when he held it up. Mm-hmm. And I don't actually know what the other guy said, but because of the way he held it up, because of the way the camera was in relation to his fingers, I knew that. And then I was like, okay, well, it's got to be, they do three like this.
Yeah.
Although I didn't actually know that that's how they did
until
three.
Bridget said it later. Yeah.
Yeah, until she said it later. But I'm like, it's got to be a culture thing.
Yeah. And then it was interesting to me they didn't try for any solution. They just kind of knew that they were going to kill each other at that point. Because he's like, I've got my gun pointed at your balls. And he's like, joke's on you. I've had mine pointed at your balls this whole time. And there's no like, okay, what's our move? Like, how can we, because what can you do?
Yeah, the Nazi guy was not going to let anybody walk out of there.
And he's like, I know that if you kill me, you're going to have to kill all of them too. You're going to have to kill him on the day that his son was born and all that kind of stuff.
So I'm curious though, because that's happened so fast. I couldn't see who killed who, but you would think that there's the British guy, the German officer killer guy, and the other guy.
Yeah. And Bridget.
Well, I don't really count her because I don't think she had a gun. Oh, she did have a gun. She did have a gun. So I'm thinking if the British guy kills the one guy, there were 5 other people. Plus the bar owner, but is the bar owner going to kill a Nazi or not?
He's French, so it just really depends. You know, it depends on the guy, how much of a sympathizer he is. Yeah.
I just feel like I think that they could have gotten better.
Well, that goes back to your rapport. They don't know each other's fighting styles, what moves they're going to make and stuff.
You're right. Yeah.
And he's got his gun pointed right at him immediately.
Yeah. And the other guy stabs him.
Yeah.
Which is, he shoots him and stabs him.
Yeah. Stabs him a bunch of times.
See?
Could have survived.
He could have maybe turned around.
We knew he was crazy.
Got somebody else in the
We knew he was crazy.
Neck.
They did get like a Gatling gun. They had a machine gun that Wilhelm picked up from the back room. So. It's tragic. Once you see it happen, you're like, okay, they're all going to die and this is what's going to happen. And I like, because even the captain, the creepy German captain he lets him drink that scotch and take another smoke of a cigarette, you know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like as much grace as he was going to give, like courtesy as he was going to show him in that situation. Because he knew he was about to die too.
Yeah.
I do like when he says, say goodbye to your Nazi balls.
Yes.
and
then bam.
Him. That's pretty good. It's so tense. They do such a good job of building that tension when they're playing the game. And he's obviously like, I want to get out of here and I'm annoyed with him. But this other guy is just so smart and is so, annoying. Estery. Yeah. Not totally. I mean, there's a movie star in there. He wants to try to butter up to it. So like it's realistic, but that's just kind of his like oily personality. You see how he moved up in the ranks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because when he does, he goes through the whole round of the game where he's King Kong. And they're like, oh, he was transported, from somewhere exotic to the United States, not by his own will, in chains on a boat. Did you realize you're like, he's going to guess that he's a slave?
Yeah. As a movie, are we making a choice to draw these parallels, like specifically?
Probably. I took it more as the mind of a Nazi officer is going to draw parallels between an ape and a slave. I mean, they dismissively talk about Negroes several times.
They dismissively talk about everyone.
Yeah.
Like, not that one is, we're not comparing suffering here. I'm not doing that. But they are down about a lot of different races or categorization of peoples. Mm-hmm. They are like in all of the conversations. Which is like an ultimate disrespect for humanity, which
it's so
is not unsurprising as they're Nazis, but
it's so elitist.
I still don't like it. Yeah.
So there's the whole firefight, and Aldo is trying to talk. Well, Willie, we got to trust each other here.
Right.
And this is a Mexican standoff and all that kind of stuff.
He did really well with that.
Trying to talk him down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he came down with his hands up without a gun.
Right.
So he was... You trust him and you believe him really the whole way through.
Yes. I don't remember though if did he kill him? He did, didn't he?
No, Bridget killed him.
Oh, that's right. And I was glad
as soon as he put the gun down, Bridget killed him.
Yes. And then we get into all the reasons I'm like, what the heck are you doing? This is not very together. 1, she left her shoe. 2, she left the napkin. 3,
She's bleeding out.
they
She's not a
left
professional.
the other guys, their own guys.
Yeah. That's just got to be a time thing, right?
It was like so easily identifiable, all of these clues in one place.
And, well, you see why he was like, why are you having this in a basement? You're trying to get my men killed.
Right.
Right? And he was right.
He was right, but I just feel like he could have, they had enough people left over that they could have tried to help scatter the evidence a little bit.
I wondered, I don't know how big of a town or city this was in. Did they just literally not have time to go over?
It had to be because the thing was the next night, right? The premiere was the next night. So they had to
I'm
not
just
have
worried
time.
about the police or more Nazis showing up or whatever. Like, you got to get in. You're already carrying a wounded movie star, like the most attention attractive thing you could possibly be doing.
That had to be it, but that doesn't mean I'm less disappointed.
Right. Yeah. And it's just sometimes war sucks. Like, this is just, you only have so many options and they're all bad kind of thing, I think. So they're down in the vet where he's about to pull the slug out. Did you think it was fair that he when he was pushing on that wound and interrogating her?
No and yes.
Right.
Because I know what I know because I
Right.
saw the scene. So I didn't think she was double-crossing anybody. But I can understand where he
And
was
she
like,
even
I
says
have
that.
to be sure about this.
Yeah.
So it didn't occur to me for him to do that until he started doing it. I was like, okay,
And
yeah,
then
you got to be sure.
You don't see there being ill will about it. She doesn't go, why did you do that? That was ridiculous. She's just like, okay, here's the next plan. And these are the only allies I have.
How did you like her comment about, I'm stupid for asking, but I assume the only language you can speak is English?
Yes, because she's absolutely right. Mm-hmm.
So true.
It's so natural everywhere else in the world to speak 2 or 3 languages. And she's like, well, you're a freaking American, so I bet you only speak whatever the English that you do speak.
And then he's like, he speaks the third most. And
He
he's
goes,
like,
I don't speak any.
And he's like, exactly, the third most. Which tracks
so
too.
funny.
Yeah.
And he's like, I speak the most Italian. And he's, buongiorno.
Yes,
like he just
it's horrible. It's so bad.
She's like, oh, well, we might not be totally sunk because Germans don't have a good ear for Italian. She's giving them way too much credit for like, oh, you speak Italian, but your accent probably isn't that good. He's like, no, he means that he knows how to say grazie. Like that's where we're at. So funny. They make their plan. And so the note that I really took here is that these are a really good few scenes that are stacked together. When they're making their plan, you're like, okay, like you're kind of tracking with it. You're following Bridget's mindset, which is this is what we have to do. We don't really have a lot of options here. We're not going to cancel Operation Kino. Okay, we do some Italian, we bluff our way in the door, bada bing, bada boom, we're blowing the place up. You're kind of following that.
Yeah.
And then when you see them standing there in their tuxes, you as if you are like, oh no, this was such a bad plan. And then Christoph Waltz walks up and you're like, this was always such a bad plan.
Yeah.
And you were right at the time, and then you are still right then later. Like, it's so good. It's like, this is making plans, and sometimes
they didn't
it's
have
bad.
Anything else. Like, they had no other...
Mm-hmm. Because you're
no other avenues of success.
It's actually, I want to take it back. You don't see them in their tuxes and immediately realize this was a terrible plan. It's happening as he's interrogating her about her broken leg. He's like,
yes.
You're on a mountain? What mountain? We're in Paris. Oh, yesterday?
Was that yesterday?
Yeah. That's a really fresh cast.
Which, by the way,
he's
the
just
cast
nailing
is
her.
like in the form of a high heel.
Yep.
Which I thought was crazy,
I
good,
don't know.
interesting.
Acted,
it was
movie star. It's something.
Yeah.
My note is that Christoph Waltz, Colonel Hans Landa, loves having a rat in a trap. He loves knowing that he holds all the cards.
Loves making you uncomfortable.
There is no reason for him to burst out laughing at them being Italian guys, or to say it again, Gorlami. One more time, Gorlami. I'm not hearing it, Gorlami.
Why
he's
would
just
you
making fun of them.
Why would you go down that road?
He's just making fun of them. It's just a bit for him.
No, I mean Brad Pitt and the other guys. Like, why don't you walk away?
They're just too. He's the security guard guy. They might even already know that he's the Jew hunter, right? They don't want to get into a shootout right then and there. Maybe they're like, they can't be so dumb as to think that they're getting away with it.
Yeah, I don't think going into this mission, I don't think any of them thought that they were going to make it out. Do you?
No.
I don't even think Shoshana and Marcel thought they were going to make it out.
No, which I don't totally understand. It doesn't seem It seems like Marcel should have been able to light it on fire and then get out.
Yeah, I agree.
If the doors were properly locked. And so I don't know if it was just we want to make this sacrifice kind of thing or not.
Yeah.
It could have been just on the principle of the thing. But him doubled over laughing, turning around and slapping his knee.
So awkward.
It is just like, how is someone a better actor than this guy? Like, he is playing intelligent, like creepy, manipulative SS officer in that first scene, and then just the laugh, like the sheer joy laughter on his face, or him eating the strudel, and you're not really sure does he recognize her or not. He plays so many different like emotions. It's not one note at all, and he's so believable in all of them because you don't actually think that he thinks it's funny. You think he thinks that. He's getting so much joy just poking at these idiots that he's about to kill.
He thinks I'm making them look stupid and do stupid things because I know.
Now they know that I know.
I don't.
And they're uncomfortable with it.
I didn't even.
He's making it so obvious.
Yeah. I was thinking he's just like, I can bend them to my will and I know the full story. And in order for them to keep it up, they've got to do it.
Yeah, and he's that kind of person that gets off on that power and that manipulation and stuff. Yeah, it's just so good, and even beyond analyzing it and really looking into his acting, it's just like, I don't know. I love watching this guy do this. There's something about Christoph Waltz coming down and just bursting out into perfect Italian that you're like, this guy is such a treasure. Yeah. I love watching him do this stuff. I'm not rooting for him, but man,
you're not rooting for his character, but he plays playing it really
absolutely killing
believably,
it.
And yeah,
I think he might have won for supporting actor, or he was nominated maybe for supporting actor in this film. He's just so good. So that's great. Then he kills Bridget, which we already talked about. Is there more that we want to talk about with Shoshana and Marcel? Their storyline isn't my number one that I prefer some of the other stuff, but we see a shot of them threatening a guy who's going to produce this English language little blurb that she's doing and stuff like that. Did that really grip you?
I actually was.
Okay, great.
I was captivated by it.
Awesome.
The first time she says,
it's very artsy.
My
all
love,
of that stuff
whatever, something, I'll see you later, my love, or whatever. And so I was like, is that just an affectionate terminology, or is there a romantic thing happening here? So I think it is a romantic thing.
I think so. It's very subtextual. It doesn't come out. They don't kiss or anything.
It's enough for him to know her name is Shoshana.
Yeah.
So they have.
That's intimacy.
They have this wonderful line where she says, and I'll butcher it, but something to the effect of, we've kept this theater from burning down. We can burn it down.
Yeah.
Which is very like.
And she says something like, I'm going to kill all these Nazis and I know that you're not going to let me do it alone. Something like that too.
Which I think is an intimacy thing. Like,
very much so. Yeah.
I feel like I have to do this and I know that you're in it with me. I would give you the out, but
you're not going to take it. Yeah.
So I liked that. I like that she had this interaction with them at the luncheon, and she immediately knows that she has an opportunity to do something.
Yeah.
And I imagine she's thinking about that all through the end of the lunch to the private showing. And then she's like, we're putting this in place. And so they decide that they're going to do this. They very quickly, they have the film that is very, very flammable. They're going to
which they took time to show us. They did those little cuts. They're
going to insert a blurb splicing the film that's being shown at the premiere and insert that little blurb. And then at the right time, just for the theatrics and the artsiness of it all, they're going to light the film on fire and take out the whole theater. And something good will have come from this. And if she dies in the process, she believes that it's worth it to kill these 300 people.
Yeah. And might even make it better. Yeah.
Yes. And that she's okay if he ends up dying in the process too. So
and they're talented enough artists to know that's also going to look sick when the flames are coming up while she's still talking.
Yes.
And it's just,
and I think
it's
this
really
is
cool.
that symbols have power kind of thing.
Yeah.
Too. Like, you're going to look in the eyes of the German, or not the German, the Jew who did it. Or is that's what she says or something like that, which I think is really poetic justice, for lack of a better term, right? Like, it's just.
And the message that she's giving there is only going to be seen by people who, if her plan goes correctly, are going to die. Like, that message is going to live and die just right there in that room. It's not going to get out. No one else is going to know what she said or anything like that. I did
write down, like, oh, I can't believe she says Marcel light it up or light the match or whatever. And I'm like, don't
use his name. Don't implicate him.
Don't implicate. That's the word I was looking for. Don't implicate him. Like,
but she knew as well as you and I do that there's 2 employees of this place, her on the screen, the other one is a black guy. Like, he's not getting,
they're not
even
getting
if he makes
away.
it out, there's no story he can tell that's going to make them believe wasn't involved.
Yeah.
So it's just, we see how a plan can be ruined by coincidence down in the bar. We see then they can make the best plan they can out of the scraps of that plan, which can be ruined by it just not being good enough. But then at the exact same time, 2 versions of the same plan happen to come together in a way that is 1000% perfect, could not have been scripted to be better. So, like, you see all the variations of, like, what planning can do, I think.
I think even without the bastards, it could have gone off.
Yeah.
Like, they could have burnt the theater down and everything. I think the explosions definitely helped. I don't know about...
To kill everyone, I think so, yeah.
Yes. I don't know that if the bastards had been there, because I was thinking about this, Christoph Waltz can't... He's threatening to make the call so that they can get out of the theater before the bombs go off, unless he gets his deal.
He can get at least the big wigs out of the theater.
Yes.
He can get Goering and Goebbels and
if
Hitler.
The Inglorious Basterds aren't there at all, he would never be able to threaten to make that call. So I think that if they were completely removed, it still would have been a successful mission.
I think so.
But I think the fact that they were there, right, just means double success.
Yeah, I mean, it's better to have a fail-safe.
Like a fail-safe, that's the word I'm looking for,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. You know, you just love it when the Nazis die. You know, it's great. Hitler being blown up and all that. Now, how do we feel about, what's it called? The Pride of the Nation? Or
A Nation's Pride.
A Nation's Pride. Yeah, A Nation's Pride. Pride of Nations is the super racist American film from the 1920s. A Nation's Pride, it's Zoller, it's Zemo up there in his bird's nest going pop, 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 picking off Americans. The only thing I really had to say about this whole thing is that Tarantino loves making one of his through lines of his movies that movies are important and like movies are good and cool, because we've got Shoshana owns this movie theater that puts her in a position of power enough to like change the course of world history by getting all these Nazis killed.
Yes.
And also, the only reason Hitler is there is because they make it pretty clear he believes so much in this movie, Nation's Pride, that it can turn the tide. German morale can be boosted such that they're actually going to win the war. Because by then, you know, historically, it's not looking good, right? After D-Day, he commits suicide before Germany even totally gives up the ghost. So, Tarantino is making Goebbels obsessed with the whole movie making thing. And, if that's going to, he's like, I've been thinking about it for weeks. I've decided to come because me being there could be so important. Right. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's a movie, but back then, I mean, the monoculture was different. If there's only one movie to see and everyone sees it, then it might have that big of an impact.
I think it can. I think it could. Yeah. I think it goes back to the symbols have power kind of thing. And I think that's why I personally feel like there's a responsibility that you have to, if you are, let's rephrase this. If you're in a position where you can affect the masses with something that you create, you have a responsibility to be responsible with it.
Yeah, to do that ethically or make the kind of changes that you can and should make.
I also think that it is a propaganda piece, and there's a thing that there's a whole reason that you learn about, maybe not very well, but you learn about what propaganda is and what its purpose is and how that works.
Yeah, you're telling me.
That's like, there's a reason it's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's like, this is Goebbels. He's the German minister of propaganda. And that's just like a title, which it has such a negative connotation now. Like, oh, that's just propaganda. Like, but back then it's again, the minister of propaganda, you know?
Right.
So that is interesting. Is there anything else besides, so I guess I don't understand why the last two, the Bear Jew, Donnie and Omar, why they couldn't have just dropped their explosives and bolted out of there. Like why they had to keep it strapped to their legs.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was strapped to their legs or if they were strapped to the chair legs.
I think it was strapped to their legs.
That's
I mean,
what
like there were
thought.
socks and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't understand that either.
They were just turned into bombs. Yeah. Just to make it safer. I mean, if you drop them, then there's a 5% chance someone finds them or whatever. But
I guess, yeah.
it's the same thing as Shoshana and Marcel. They're like,
They knew
I want to
going
die
in they
killing
weren't
Nazis.
coming out. Yeah.
What a way to go, you know? It's not bad. I think I wrote a note that was something like that. Donnie and Omar just shooting machine guns into an absolute herd of 100% confirmed Nazis. Like, you know, I would love to punch a Nazi. Shooting into a group of people that you know every single one of them is completely avowed, confirmed Nazi. Like that's the reason that they're there. So you are really pretty morally justified in every single one of those shots that you take. There doesn't have to be any guilt about, you know, innocents that are getting harmed or anything like that. Because these are actively powerful Nazis. You know you're about to die. You're just like, you're about to blow the whole place up. Like their euphoria, like this is what they love to do.
Yeah.
It just must be an absolute peak. I think there's a lot of men for whom it's kind of the dream, you know? You just get to shoot a bunch of Nazis and you're going to die by you shooting a bunch of Nazis. I don't know what's in our brains that works that way, but
I don't know. I think it's also like you're not coming back in the sequel.
yeah.
Like you are
there's
for
no
sure
Inglorious
you're
Basterds
gone.
too. Yeah. 100%. So give it all you got.
Yeah.
So really all we have left is BJ Novak and Brad Pitt are captured.
If you want to talk more about the Zoller coming up.
Oh,
Zoller
yes,
coming up to the thing.
absolutely. He goes up, he knocks
He
on the
leaves
door.
during
I'm
all
going to
of
pester
his
you.
killing scenes.
Yeah, because he actually feels bad.
I don't know.
Unclear.
I didn't know why he was leaving during that. But yeah, he knocks on the door and she's like, no, you have to go. You can't be up here, which like she's working.
Yeah.
This is what tells me that he is very entitled.
Yeah.
Because he knows if this goes wrong, she's in trouble.
But he doesn't care.
But that's why I'm saying he's very entitled. Like he doesn't care. I'm going to help you. Okay, sure. So then he comes in and he hurts her, right? He has the whole line about it's nice that you can feel something because he's insecure and entitled.
Yeah. And at that point, you're like, oh, he's going to rape her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And then she's like,
she flips it. Yeah.
So good. And she's like, go ahead and lock the door. And then he's like, oh, wait, really?
Yeah.
Which means he was like, he had the intentions there, but, and I don't know, again, not a psychology major.
Or a man.
It's like, or a man. But you flip that switch and then he acts overly aggressive, but then she changes the way she approaches it. And then he dials it back again. Like he's the pestering young man who's just trying to endear himself to her or whatever.
The switch from angry to horny it's not that far for him.
Yeah.
Or for a lot of men, I think.
So I thought that was really interesting. And she shoots him, which I'm like, okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Finally. Because he was getting on my
Rachel
nerves.
was like, you need to then shoot him in the head. She shoots him 3 times in the back while he's locking the door.
Yes.
And then she goes up and turns him over because now she kind of feels bad because he was one of the nicer Nazis that she's met.
He was making a noise though, right?
I don't know. I
thought
couldn't
he
tell
made
you
like
that.
a little noise and she went to flip him over. And really, she should have just shot him again.
Should have shot him again. Should have shot him in the head.
She was already 3 deep. Like just shoot him again.
You've got to headpiece him at that point.
Yeah.
It's like a zombie.
Yeah. And then as he's flipping over, he shoots her. Which again, she knew she wasn't going to get out of it. And I'm like, where's the video? Where's the movie they made? Why isn't it showing?
But she got it hooked up in time.
She got it hooked up, but she doesn't get to see it. It happens after she dies.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a bummer.
Did you take any note of the score that's happening when he's shooting her there? I couldn't tell you the song. I couldn't even tell you what it was like.
No.
But I think the music in this movie is really pretty effective. I think the needle drops are always pretty good. It was kind of like an upbeat, like 80s, like synth pop song almost. It wasn't super period piece or anything like that at that point.
The beginning of Barracuda was in there.
Could be.
But I didn't hear anything after that. It just put me in the same vein as that.
Something like
and
that.
I don't remember when exactly it happened in the movie, but I was like, oh, is this? And then I got distracted with what was happening.
I think it's a good score. I mean, it's not mind blowing. It doesn't make itself the star of the film, but it really does. It supports everything all the way through.
Well, yeah.
So that's really good. She says, "This is the face of Jewish vengeance."
Loved it. Loved that. And there's flames. There's flames coming up.
Yep.
And
did you feel any sympathy towards any Nazis at any point?
No.
Oh, it's a German soldier. He was just doing his duty, right? That guy, he's up there. He's shooting all the Americans. He's just doing what he was told to do. He would have been killed if he didn't.
Become in that 300 of most influential people.
So those guys,
just doing your.
Did you have any sympathy for any other Nazi soldiers during the movie?
Not particularly.
Were they trying to get us to feel a little bit of something for
I don't think so.
Zemo? No?
No.
Okay. Because he has the whole machismo thing instead, yeah.
I think that I don't remember this in history, and so I could totally be wrong here, but I think that not all German soldiers were Nazis. I don't know how that worked.
That? I mean, there's the SS, they're not all Gestapo or SS. They're not all involved in the Holocaust aspect. But Nazism is just the name of the political party now, the National Socialists. So, I mean, they might not all have identified as National Socialists, but it became a fascist thing pretty quickly where, like, this is what the whole country is. So
it started out as not all.
So Nazi is a fair descriptor for the entire army.
Okay.
I mean, it is a Nazi army. I'm sure you could argue that there were individuals who knew what they were doing was wrong, but were doing it because they were scared or whatever. I mean, that's a moral quandary that is left up to other people that aren't me to decide.
That's always being talked about, though, too. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you blame someone for following orders? It's like, well, when the order is inherently immoral, then yes, probably. But is there any more we want to say about he captures Brad and BJ? He says, "Tell me, Aldo, if I were sitting where you're sitting, would you show me mercy?"
And he's like, nope.
We know he would have already shot and scalped him.
Yep.
Because it's not about trying to make the deal.
Right.
I wrote, to Brad, the Nazis are the bad guys. Killing them is the right thing to do. He believes it's worth dying. He is giving it his all to kill Hitler and the whole thing.
Yeah.
He actually hates Nazis. Christoph Waltz is out for himself. He likes solving puzzles. Feeling powerful, he gets off on it. He assumes that everyone who he is smart enough to respect is playing that same game. Like you said, we're not operating on the same level of mutual respect that I assumed that we were.
Yes.
So basically, just to spell it out, he at this point has seen the writing on the wall. He knows Hitler is going to lose. He wants to hitch his wagon to the best possible outcome, which is getting the Allies to think that he was part of it.
Right.
But then, why did he strangle Bridget? I don't know. And interestingly, he says Jew hunter. It's just a name that stuck. Like, he says it with disdain at that point. Whereas he told Lapadite in the very beginning of the movie that he was proud of his name because he had earned it by hunting down the Jews. Which one do you think is true?
Which one is true?
Yeah. The second one he says in a way that makes me believe him more.
I think the second one is the least true.
Like, I mean, the second chronologically.
Nope. Yes.
At the end of the film.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
I think they're both true at the time they're spoken.
Oh, you think something happened in those 3 years that made him be like, I'm more than a Jew hunter or whatever?
I think he realized they were going to lose the war and that maybe what he was working towards being the best
putting
Jew
stank
hunter
on him.
Yeah. Wasn't serving him anymore, and he needed to change that.
I could see that. Did you expect them to kill his radio operator?
I expected them to kill him, honestly.
Yeah.
And I love how he says, he kills him and he's like, I've thought about this and I think I'm just going to get yelled at. And I've been yelled at before.
Yeah, he's like, they're gonna kill you, or you're gonna hang. He's like, nah, I'm not gonna hang. They probably yell at me. I haven't yelled at before.
Yeah. I mean, he's okay with it.
He's like, they want, at the end of the day, they want you. They don't really want him.
Yeah.
Because he goes, oh, is this really necessary? The handcuffs. Like, I'm a sucker for appearances.
How unsmart.
Yeah.
Like, we thought he was smart this whole time. He's even sitting at the table and says, we're not operating from the mutual respect I thought we were. He acknowledges that.
Yeah. Well, and so now from that point forward, he's underestimating Aldo.
Yes.
He's underestimating him, not, I don't think intelligence wise, but more his conviction wise.
What motivates Aldo is not what motivates.
Yeah. And he isn't empathetic enough to realize that.
Is empathetic the right word? I think he's just unaware.
Unaware of someone else's motivations. I mean, I think it's not like he's feeling bad for it. Yeah, it's to be able to understand someone else's motivations.
Yeah.
I think empathy is what that would take. Insightfulness, I guess. Can you be insightful while having no empathy? Maybe you can. Maybe Sherlock Holmes would argue that you could.
Maybe.
And he says, BJ Novak's like, sir, I think that might just be your best work yet, or your masterpiece or something. And that's the time that you see it. You don't see the knife go in,
which I couldn't watch.
To private butts at first. Couldn't.
Well, just a little bit, but it seemed like a really, really deep cut.
That's what Rachel thought. But it was only getting, I mean, on the forehead, anything seems like a deep cut, I think. I mean, it was like a half an inch.
Right there.
Yeah.
It seems like it goes in, like it seemed like almost like thick skin, flappy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, do you have a muscle that crosses over? I mean, obviously you have to have a little bit because you raise your eyebrows.
Yeah.
So
it's
I don't
enough.
know. Yeah,
it's enough to
really
scar.
Deep. Yeah.
And are you worried that he's got to have practice that's not going to bleed out? I'm almost surprised he doesn't heat up his knife. And do like a cauterizing thing.
Because it didn't look like it was gushing, and head wounds bleed a lot. So I mean, obviously they did this on a fake dummy, right? They're not actually doing this on a person for the movie, but
the thing is that he should have known. He should have known he was going to do this, because he says, I've interviewed all of these boys that you've tattooed swastikas on before, so I know what your deal is. But he was too short-sighted to realize that he did that because he believed in it, not just as a scare tactic. It was an effective scare tactic, but that wasn't the whole reason.
Right. I'm not really sure what the other word is, but there's sort of this reason that it's this whole like know your enemy, respect your enemy. Like all of those are, I'm not really sure what to call it.
Truisms.
To keep in mind what you're doing when you're going up against somebody, right? And so this whole time I'm like, okay, he's our enemy in this movie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm understanding him a little bit. I'm not respecting him as a person, but I'm respecting his ability to do as an opponent. Yes. And then at this last half of the movie, when he kills, the last 15 minutes where he kills the radio operator, Aldo kills the radio operator, I have no respect or just reverence or anything for the German character, because he didn't see any of that coming.
Yeah.
And I feel like he should have, if he was a quote unquote worthy opponent, which I struggle saying that, but you know what I mean? If he was as good at his job being bad, and strategically as he wants us to believe, and we're led to believe all the way up to the end, he should have seen some of that coming.
Yeah. So I think the idea, my takeaway from that is that he let his guard down. Once he had him caught and he was like, okay, I've got it sewn up. I can make the call or not, and I win either way. Okay, I'm good. I can just be honest. I can say whatever I'm going to say. He lets his guard down, and it goes to just further emphasize the difference between him and Aldo. I mean, I keep saying the true believer versus, narcissistic cynic, who he thinks it's about having the answer. He's like, okay, I've solved it, so it's going to blow up like this, or it's not like this because of my call. That's the answer. I'm done. The game is over, and it's not a game, so it's never over for Aldo.
Right.
And so he never lets his guard all the way down. He keeps yelling, "You Limburger smelling, sauerkraut eating mother effort!" Like he's like cussing him out the whole time. Don't you dare touch me again, and all that stuff, because he And Lando would have just like calmly been if it was flipped, he would have killed him. But
right.
Yeah, it's so I think that's kind of one of the messages of the film, as such as it is that, it's great to be a brilliant strategist and speak a bunch of languages and have, the kind of mind that can figure out X, Y, and Z. And that's a really useful trait to have. But you gotta really believe in what it is, or eventually you're going to miss a step.
Mm-hmm. And maybe if you can't empathize with another person, you're going to miss it.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't understand where Aldo was coming from. And I mean, I feel like ultimately that killed him. Yeah. Didn't kill him.
Because they could understand each other on some level, where he was like,
almost
look,
killed
that's
him.
A good deal. Would you take what's his name, Udovich? Would you taken that deal? He was like, I would have taken that deal. He's like, you are allowing us to end the war right now. Like, that's good. I'm into it.
But there's got to be some kind of consequence.
But I just, what are you going to do with that Nazi? I get the feeling you're not going to wear it every day.
Right.
And I like a uniform on my Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
Does he say Nazi or Nazis?
Nazis.
So that is Quentin Tarantino's Inglorious Basterds. I hope that our readers at this point don't begrudge us. It's not that we were trying to use coarse language or anything. That's just the title of the film, and we're that's the group they're the bastards. So it's spelled differently, so it doesn't count. Anyway, we would love to hear what you guys think about our takes on Christoph Waltz, Brad Pitt, BJ Novak. We didn't talk about the bear Jew. Rachel was like, ask Jess, how does he stay so pumped up? He's back in that cave for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
While he interrogates him. I thought you'd say that. And does all that kind of stuff. And he's like, he stays juiced. He comes out. He goes, Teddy effing ball game. Like, is just ready to go.
I honestly expected the head to fly off, which is not actually.
But it's something that would happen in a Tarantino film, right?
Like, but not in.
Like at the end of Django when the bodies are just launching backwards from the pistol shots and stuff.
I expected that. So I watched the first hit and then I'm like, okay, I can't watch that. Because for whatever reason, I used to be able to watch the gory and it not bother me. Mm-hmm. And it's not like it makes me queasy or anything. It just really makes me flinch. So I just kind of like close one eye.
Because that's real. I mean, a baseball bat getting taken to a dude in handcuffs kneeling on the ground, like that's real.
Yeah, he's dead. I mean, he's dead after the first hit, honestly. Yeah. I have no clue about this guy. Except he's from Boston or something.
I think so, yeah. I mean, when he says Ted Williams, yeah.
Yeah. He's definitely into it. But do you know what I did appreciate is I kind of expected for them to be like, okay, simmer down now. But they didn't. They let him be him.
He's like, I was hoping you'd say that because watching him beat up Nazis with the bats is as close as we get to going to the movies.
Yeah. And again, I'm not like condoning it, but
they share a communal sickness.
Yes.
Which involves loving. I mean, they're physically scalping. Like, obviously they had those dummies rigged in such a way that like it comes off as a really clean looking scalp. But like, man, if that was real, they had put a lot of practice into getting that good of scalps off of those guys. And that's so gory. I mean, again, intimate and personal. Like you've got that guy's
it's not
scalp
the same
in your
as like shooting somebody. It's a very physical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they're taking off their socks and shoes and throwing them.
Which
I didn't totally get that.
It was weird because I'm like, they're either a strong enough aversion to it because they came from Nazis, but I'm also like, you're in the middle of a war. If I'm understanding this correctly, you basically have what's on your back.
Yeah.
So you may only have 2 pairs of socks. You might want an extra pair of socks.
Well, they wear Nazi uniforms at points too.
Yeah.
To ambush people and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'm like, I kind of thought that I noticed that and I thought it was interesting, but not really enough to like dive into.
Yeah. I don't fully understand what the reason for that was, but. Well, Jess, so you liked Inglorious Basterds.
I did.
And you would watch it again.
I would watch it again. The only reason I might not watch it, depending on what I'm doing, like if it was on TV, I would turn it on. Mm-hmm. But if I was actively doing other things, I might not watch it because of all of the subtitles, which I like subtitles, but I like them so that I can catch up on the English, not because necessarily they're in a different language. So if they're speaking a different language, I really have to pay extra close attention.
Yeah, you got to be paying attention. It's not a popcorn background.
Right.
movie.
So it's something I would have to be paying attention to. I would probably definitely. I would watch it a couple more times for sure. I think I'm sure there are things that I missed that I think would be interesting.
I think that there are some jokes. There's some like really, really classic cinema jokes that I don't get, right? Some of the names of directors and actors that they're bringing up, and like Goebbels has strong reactions when you say this actress's name
never
or
say
whatever.
her name again in my presence or whatever.
And there's some of those where like, that's just, they're talking about people that are probably real that I just don't
know.
I don't know enough about the history of German cinema kind of thing. So there are some jokes that go over our heads, but I'm sure there's stuff in there. If you've got a little, your favorite joke or bit or theme, we'd love to hear from you at our hotline.
240-movie-76.
Get at us at FlabberPod on Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Vine, Peach.
Is
Peach
Vine
us.
still a thing?
No, most of these still aren't things. What else do kids use these days? TikTok.
You can text us or leave a voicemail.
And if there's other movies you think we should do, we'd love to hear about that as well. And
what do we have coming up in the pipeline?
Ooh, well, I don't want to promise too much in case something changes. I think we're going to look at another rom-com after When Harry Met Sally. And I think we're also going to look at a sequel that's currently in theaters, a sequel to a film that we recently discussed.
Yes. Lots of fun things.
Look forward to that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.